We're super excited now to be presenting three experts in our economy. The first is Trevin Stratton, and he is the Chief Economist and Vice President of Policy and Advocacy at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. He is an award-winning business economist and helped many organizations identify and manage opportunities arising from the trends that are reshaping industry and international business. He is one of Ottawa's top 40 under 40. He studied at Carleton University as well as the London School of Economics in the United Kingdom and the Graduate Institute of International and Development Studies in Switzerland. And of course, is a very close colleague of mine with the Canadian Chamber. And may I say just quickly that he and the Canadian Chamber of Commerce have provided stunning leadership during this pandemic, and we're very grateful to have them. We're also excited to welcome Andrew Arnott from RBC. Andrew is the Regional Vice President of RBC's Ontario North and East region, overseeing the overall performance and delivery of commercial and small business services to more than 15,000 business clients. He sits on the board of the Youth Services Bureau Foundation and is also a member of the Invest Ottawa Venture Development Advisory Board. He has served on several boards, including Invest Ottawa Innovation Advisory Board, the Telfer MBA Business School MBA Mentoring Program, and the Elder Care Foundation. And we work closely with both Andrew at RBC and Trevin at the Chamber of Commerce for a new initiative that I'm hoping Andrew might mention, which is Canada United and our Buy Local, Buy Canadian program. So I'm hoping he might find a way to talk about that coming up this weekend. And it was just so funny that Michelle brought up how local spending is a huge part of our recovery. So welcome, Andrew. And then also we have joining us Andrew Lashman. He is the Chief Operating Officer of Field Effect. He has a 20-year background building and managing IT security products and programs, including 13 years in government and defense, as well as security policy development with the Government of Canada's Privy Council Office and contributions to Canada's cybersecurity strategy. His technical background includes development of software and systems and cybersecurity analytics, as well as leading incident detection and response teams. So welcome to Andrew, and Trevin, and thank you for being here today for this important panel discussion. We have everyone on? Okay, fantastic. So we're going to start with Trevin today. Let's take full advantage of the fact that we have a chief economist among us. Certainly, Trevin, there's been a lot of pain and suffering when it comes to the economy, but we also know that there's evidence of an economic rebound, especially when it comes to employment, housing, and some retail sectors. What signs are there out there of that signal a recovery for us?
Yeah, and so what's really interesting is that for the first half of the year, the Canadian economy took a very big hit. Actually, for the first half of the year, it was larger than the hit that the U.S. economy took as well. And that's keeping in mind, it seems like ages ago now, but obviously there were the rail blockades before COVID as well, and a decline in oil prices. But what's actually somewhat surprising is that the economic recovery has been a little quicker to occur than was previously expected. So oil prices have recovered. Canada's housing market is almost booming again, and that's partially because of pent-up demand during the first few months of COVID, but also partially because of historically low interest rates that we're seeing. And obviously, some of the government emergency support programs has also kept disposable income elevated and consumer spending high, despite record jobless numbers. And even if we're looking at some of the indicators, retail sales now have already recovered to pre-pandemic levels. And what's really interesting, I know David certainly mentioned this earlier, is that consumer confidence is starting to rebound as well. So if we look at how consumers feel about their own personal finances, about their own job security, about housing prices in their own neighborhoods, these have started to go up again as well. And particularly when it comes to jobs too, we saw about 3 million job losses in March and April. What we've seen is that we've recouped about half of that. So about 1.6 million jobs have been recreated, or we've gotten them back in the months since. And so that's obviously promising when it comes to consumption as well, in terms of an economic rebound. Though there are a number of groups of Canadians, women, low-income earners, youth, immigrants, people of diverse backgrounds, that might not be experiencing the recovery at the same pace. But basically what we're seeing is that we see a rebound because we're entering a new stage of the pandemic, or at least the economic aspects of the pandemic with reopening. But what we should expect is that the economy will still remain below capacity for quite a long time, until we can figure out a vaccine, or until we can actually find out our new normal going ahead.
Thank you, Trevin. Now we'll go to you, Andrew, at RBC. It's great to have you here from one of Canada's largest commercial banks. And again, thank you for your ongoing support and your leadership with Canada United. Andrew, in Ottawa, RBC has deep relationships with many commercial customers across all sectors. What sectors or industries will experience the most growth coming out of this pandemic?
Well, thanks so much, and it's wonderful to be here, and I really love the plug you're giving to CanadaUnited.ca. So I will just quickly add, if you haven't looked at it, please do so. It is all about buying local. Love your local business owner. And if there's one thing to think about, is there's a chance to win one of 25 prizes up to $10,000 this weekend alone, even just for dining or buying local. So it's a really great initiative, over 60 organizations involved. RBC is super proud to be involved. So go check it out. So to your question, Celine, I think, it's interesting, just listening earlier to David and certainly to Michelle, very much in step with what we've heard already, is the Ottawa and the Ontario North and East effect. I would also start with the notion that the Ottawa effect, or the benefit of being in Ottawa, is real. I mean, the sheltering effect, we've seen this in previous recessionary times. We're sheltered, and it's a gift to be here. And I think that's certainly the case based on our anecdotal observations here as well. I would further add, maybe just to repeat a little bit, McKinsey had a recent study out that I was just reviewing, very much in step with what Michelle told us. Digital commerce, telemedicine, automation overall, clear winners throughout all of this. Specifically, I guess, a bit more for our region, I would include ag. Eastern Ontario has a big ag sector, and we're benefiting from it. Many are doing quite well through this. And the connection there would be food processors, manufacturers in non-durables, food and beverage. So maybe not surprising, but worthy of repeating, as well as durables. We do have a healthy manufacturing sector in Eastern Ontario as well. And I would further add, the supply chain that leads into construction overall has been very robust. A big highlight, of course, is Amazon opening up further in our Ottawa region. So there are some good stability indications, and I would say those would be amongst the industries that we're mostly thinking will be back faster than others. And what we would say is back within 80% or maybe 100% within the next couple of months of their top line revenue. That would be a quick overview.
Thank you, Andrew. And on to our other Andrew from Field Effect. There's been a massive shift to work from home, and the pandemic has brought other significant tech changes. In many ways, our digital world has been catapulted many steps forward during this pandemic. So your specialization is in cybersecurity. Can you comment on this trend and how cybersecurity plays into it, please?
Certainly. It's hard to imagine that cybersecurity could have become a bigger part of our lives, or even more important. But in 2020, that's managed to have occurred. The move out of our homes out of our offices rather, into our homes has really highlighted and created a shift in perspective. First is that we all realize now that networks and our data are distributed everywhere. And the second has been that it's ushered businesses into deploying new technologies and new ways of facilitating the work from home environment. And I think one of the early stories that we were seeing in the news was, of course, around the security of video conferencing services. These security issues were real and in fact were embarrassing in some cases. But I think it's important to highlight that none of those stories have anything to do with how businesses are getting ransomware, how businesses are losing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars through bank fraud and business email compromise, or why Canada's COVID-19 intellectual property is going out the door as fast as we can generate it. And so despite all these big changes in our working technologies and work patterns, what we know about attackers from years of defending against them, what we know of attackers is that they haven't really changed their patterns. And the majority of the attackers that are affecting businesses today share some key identifying characteristics. The first is that they very accurately track what's in the news, what matters to us, and they use this information to implement very effective social engineering attacks like email phishing. Second, they have a day and night focus on identifying vulnerabilities in our infrastructure that they know they can exploit. And then finally, importantly, they always have an eye to maximizing their return on investment. So for some attackers, this means figuring out how much money you have before implementing ransomware. For others, it's finding the most valuable intellectual property that they can sell. And the way this has turned out in the pandemic is that we've been observing increased attacks against VPN technology. And VPN technology, of course, being the software and hardware that you use to bridge remote workers into the home office. And so attackers are targeting this because they can access it remotely, and they also tend to favor technologies that are deployed quickly and rapidly because there may be mistakes or security configuration issues. We've also noticed a heightened attacker precision around who it is that they are targeting in 2020, and in particular, a patience on the part of attackers to implement their trade and tradecraft in multiple stages. So, for example, they're now identifying IT administrators within companies and phishing for their passwords. They're doing this not to compromise their email accounts, but so that they have the keys to the kingdom once they compromise the VPN infrastructure of the company and then can move around. Attackers are incredibly skilled, flexible, and adaptive. They are a business. To understand this, we can take a look at how ransomware has evolved. And so in early days, the numbers were big, it was expensive until businesses just put up their hands and said, well, we can't pay. And that shifted to lower ransoms where the equation became insurance companies will just pay out the ransom because it's cheaper to do that than it is to remediate on the network. And what we're seeing today is that the attackers are spending time understanding exactly who you are. They're using some of the patterns that some of the high-end nation-state actors use in terms of reading about you, accessing your financial documents, determining exactly how much financial and operational stress the business can bear, and then choosing the attack accordingly. So all this to say, attackers are continuing to progress and evolve in the way they would normally, but they are adapting to what is unique in the COVID environment. And one last thing I would say that we've noticed is that stepping away from the attackers, what I do think surprised a few people is that the way in which businesses respond to cyber incidents has had to change as a result of the pandemic and work from home environment. I can give you an example. We had a customer where we identified a compromise of a user that was working from home on their laptop. We notified the business, and the business quickly disconnected that user from the VPN. The user could no longer access the corporate network, but the attacker was still present on the worker's machine with the company data. Normally, what you would see is an IT person walking down a hall to go pick up a computer, unplug it, and continue on with the incident response process. In this case, the user wasn't answering their phone, they couldn't be reached. And so we had to go into an alternate mode where, as a security provider, we had to reach in and actually shut down the system on behalf of the company. And so in this work from home environment, it's important not only to think about shoring up your defenses, but also to think ahead in terms of business resiliency and network resiliency. What do you do if an incident were to occur, and how has that changed now that employees are distributed geographically?
Okay, thank you. Wow, I bet you're busy these days. We're going to go back to Trevin. As an economist, Trevin, if we asked you to peer into the future, and just forewarning, I'm going to hang on every word you say now, what will our economy look like in the fall of 2020 and beyond?
Yeah, so what's really interesting, so I mentioned in answering the first question is that there is a bit of an uptick, but what I think we'll have to accept is that our economy won't get back to pre-pandemic levels for quite some time now, and that's what I meant by it operating below capacity. And so to look at this year, the really big hit was in Q2 of 2020, obviously, quarterly decline of around 9 or 10% in our economy, and now we're getting back to growth. But overall for this year, for 2020, we're looking at somewhere around a 6.5% decline in GDP for Canada. The good news is that in 2021, we're looking at substantial growth. I mean, somewhere near 5% is the projection. But I always say this with the caveat that, within COVID times, we have no idea what's going to happen a month from now, let alone, a year from now in 2021. And so it'll depend on a number of different factors. Obviously, a vaccine being one of them, obviously avoiding a potential second wave being another big one. But also it's going to depend on the government's response, right? We have a throne speech coming in September. We have a potential budget or fall economic update coming as well, where we're really going to understand, at least federally and also provincially within Ontario, what is going to be government's economic recovery plan. And if they're really able to focus on transitioning towards growth-led policies, on transitioning towards policies that will attract and retain investment and encourage business investment to kind of resurrect that is going to have a huge part to play in being able to accelerate any trajectory for economic recovery. But what we're looking at is we're probably not going to see us fully making up the losses of the pandemic until at least kind of the first half of 2022.
Right. And, I want to say it depends a lot on the government response, but that has a lot to do with the work that you and our Chamber Network team has done on behalf of the business community, because I know you've had a lot to do with what those policy recommendations are. So thank you very much for that work. So Andrew, at RBC, you're dealing with thousands of local businesses in a variety of ways, and all of us are in uncharted waters when it comes to this pandemic economy. What advice do you have for business owners as they navigate these unprecedented times?
Yeah, it's something that we think about all the time, and I think there are some key fundamentals to keep in mind. I do want to sort of quickly circle back on, maybe on the future as well. That it's my firm belief that we will continue to see winners in every industry. So if you're strong pre-COVID, you're going to keep being strong post-COVID. So I know it can feel really heavy sometimes. We heard from Michelle saying no one is okay, and I think I would tend to agree with that, except for there are some companies that were very strong pre-COVID and that will come through this extraordinarily well as well, regardless of industry. So I think it's important not to get fixated on, that's looking really tough for the whole industry. And in order for you to do that sort of analysis, I would say better informed makes better decisions. Susan Richards had a recent piece in the OBJ that talked a lot about cash flow and things that you really need to be thinking about as a business owner or a business overall. And I think that the number one item that she brought out, and I'm referencing it again, is financial statements. When you have a litany of priorities during COVID, and some businesses are really struggling. I don't want to whitewash it, but for those, even we saw on the poll earlier today, there's 24% of businesses saying, I'm really concerned, I'm really struggling. My advice to you is get into Welsh, get into your CA firms, get your statements up to date and better informed to make better decisions. I think that sort of assessment piece to be better informed would also include looking at government regulations. They're changing. They're impacting a lot of businesses in different ways. Do you understand them all? We heard about consumer demand. How are you assessing your own clients in real time? And how can you further and go deeper to better understand what your clients need of you, whether it's B2C or B2B? I think if you're an exporter, I think my advice is to really think through, call it even the political stability of cross-border. Think about, inter-party risks and exposure when you are in that exporting mode. Don't forget our crown corporations. Both EDC and BDC offer very unique opportunities and solutions to Canadian businesses. I think, just to go further into the financial health of companies, we have to make sure that enough businesses have truth tellers. If you don't have a board, you need to get some advisors that are going to, be that truth teller and help you to go through cash flow and the cash realities of a forecast. So in addition to your financial statements, what does that near-term cash runway look like? And can you go deeper into some of those conversion cycles, whether it's inventory management, whether it's looking at your ARs and AP? It's those basic fundamentals in some way, but they've never been more important than today. I guess I would conclude with, the digital investment and e-commerce. We heard about Main Street. What's the advice, needed for Main Street to go online? Shopify is an awesome, example. Just to quote that, and it's wonderful. It's Ottawa based. Shopify platform itself grew by 62% between March 13th and April 24th. So we are seeing a ton of companies leverage that platform. I also want to give a plug to Invest Ottawa here. They have a program called the Digital Main Street Program. If you are a Main Street company, you can access for free some services through Invest Ottawa. There is some funding that's available through that as well. So if you are still looking on how to do that and navigate that, check out Invest Ottawa. Again, it's here in Ottawa and a great source. So that would be kind of a litany and an overview. And I guess my very final comment would be, there was a CEO that told me this, a few years ago. Andrew, bad news generally doesn't get better with time. So I want to share it with you now. And that to me is an absolute critical piece. If you're worried about the future, honestly come in and talk to your banker, talk to your advisors. We're going to be as flexible as we possibly can throughout this period, especially given many of the government programs are expiring heading into the fall. So if you're already feeling a little uneasy, get your financials done, lean on your advisors, and come and talk. And as Canada's biggest bank, and on behalf of all bankers, we want to help. We want to get our clients through this. So
Thank
thanks.
you. Thank you, Andrew. So I love your messaging, and you're right. Like, we can't paint every sector or even size of business with the same brush, because many of them went into this in a very different position. So focus on the fundamentals, innovate, and I was going to mention the Digital Main Street as well with Invest Ottawa. And we're also working with the Toronto Board of Trade to run that same program for non-Main Street businesses. So there are many programs that are out there, not just to insert cash into the system, but also training and retraining. And so continuing to look for those opportunities. We appreciate your support.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. So Andrew, just to conclude our last question of this panel, and I will say, and you mentioned it, the Canadian Chamber does an annual report of the top 10 business issues across Canada, and I think cybersecurity has been on that list for some time now, Trevin. And what we knew is even pre-COVID, cybersecurity needed to be higher on the radar for businesses, and even more so now during this pandemic. And so do you have some advice or tips, I guess, that you can share with with our businesses today about either how to get started or how to level up, if you will.
Yes, certainly. I think there's a lot that can be said about cybersecurity and what individual businesses need, but I'll maybe offer a few points of advice and start with something simple. So the first thing that I would recommend is use a password manager. So passwords are not going away. There's a lot of investment by big companies like Microsoft to move away from passwords, but they're going to be around for a long time. Password managers can be a little bit daunting to get into, but once you use them, you love them. They help create strong, unique passwords and avoid a lot of the common attacks that are placed against businesses today. Pay for a corporate license, be prepared to invest in it. And I think like Michelle said, if you want to invest locally, there's a few very good password managers that are made right here in Canada. So take a look at that. Second thing I would offer is to think about cloud security a lot more. So understand that as a customer, you have a direct role to play in the security of your cloud services. It's not all up to Amazon and Microsoft to secure your cloud service. Almost all of the attacks that you hear about are entirely related to businesses failing to secure their side of the equation. And so if you're thinking about it and what do I do to secure my cloud service, think about the word visibility. What does visibility mean? It means having insight into things like what users have accounts on your system, who is logging in, what data is moving across your cloud network, what processes are running on your cloud services. So all of that, visibility and thinking about cloud security a lot more. And the last thing I would offer is that you need to acknowledge that the people attacking you likely have far more interest in getting your money and your data than you have time in the day to be thinking about it and responding to yourself. So you have to take cybersecurity seriously, and that means investing in it. It means thinking about processes, policy, resources, can mean investing financially as well. Cybersecurity doesn't work until it's appropriately integrated into your business operations, just in the same way that your accounting, legal, sales, marketing, and IT already are.
Thank you very much. So that concludes our panel this morning. Thank you very much to our three experts who participated. And Michael, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you to you, Celine. And I thought there was such great practical advice, especially in that second round of questions. I hope our audience was furiously taking some notes. We are going to wrap up now. We've reached the end of our time here. I'm just going to show a few more things on screen as we wrap up. Just a reminder to everyone that this is the launch today. So it is available right now. If you go to ottawabusinesssurveyreport.ca, you can download that report. Once again, thank you to Welch. We heard some very practical advice from Andrew Arnott there. Get your financial statements in order and go talk to your accountant. Welch, of course, has been around. It's incredible to me when I think about this, 100 years right here in Ottawa. So a great local company with terrific longevity. Thank you to RBC Field Effect and also the Ottawa Senators. Again, we hope to see them on ice as soon as possible. And like a lot of projects, there are many, many people who have been working behind the scenes. In fact, months and months of work have gone into this report. So I wanted to say thank you specifically to Victoria, Peter, Lisa, Tanya, Connie, Yvonne, and Erica. Thanks for your support. Once again, go visit the report. Thank you to everyone. We hope that we provided you, again, I'll use the term actionable data. So use this data, go out and make some smart business decisions, fall and beyond. Thanks for tuning in, and hope to see you soon. So long, everyone.